You're listening to RIAcast, a podcast of the Southwest Florida Real Estate Investment Association. RIAcast brings together a variety of real estate entrepreneurs from all over the world to share tips and ideas. The core purpose of the Southwest Florida RIA is to help members become more profitable and successful through networking, education, and empowerment. Here are your hosts, Jeff Tamarello and Michael Lyons.
Hi, it's Jeff Tamburello with the Southwest Florida RIA. I am here with Mario Datillo of Real Estate Acquisitions USA. He was our speaker last night. Battery kind of ran out on the camera. We did record it. We're going to check it out. We thought we would just do a Zoom meeting to talk about what we talked about last night. It was a great meeting. Awesome to see everybody in person. I think we had about 30 people, which in a pandemic, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, it was a pretty good turnout.
Yeah, and Fowler Street Grill catered it, and I thought he did an amazing job with the food too, actually.
Yeah.
So tell us, why do you guys own manufactured home communities?
Well, first, thanks for doing this, Jeff. I agree. Last night was pretty awesome and great turnout. Everybody was kind of spaced out well, but still had some really good interaction. A lot of people had questions and seemed like they were actually paying attention, which is always a good sign. So, so why do we own it? Let me just back up real quick how we got into it, and that'll maybe better explain why we own them. So back in 2008, prior to that, I had a brokerage with another partner, and we were selling residential real estate, and we started brokering some short sales and things like that. And so I talked to my dad, which has a strong background in commercial construction. And I said, why aren't we buying these? It only makes sense. They're great investments. I'm seeing other people buy them. You've got the construction background. I've got the acquisition background. Let's do it. And so we did. Shortly after that, we closed down the brokerage, and my dad and I just focused mostly on buying homes. Fast forward to 2015, we decided that we wanted to move into a little bit different type of investment, long-term commercial real estate, long-term hold. And we were looking at apartment complexes, and we were struggling to find deals, stumbled across a mobile home park that happened to be in our backyard, and ended up buying it. We bought the loan on it. It was a non-performing loan, and foreclosed out and got it back, and ended up being a really good deal. So we started looking at other mobile home parks, and rest is history. We bought some self-storage as well. And so let me kind of answer your question now. We really focus on buying property types that are a few different things. Number one, in consolidating industries, all right, which manufactured housing industry is definitely consolidating. A lot of larger operators are starting to get in and buy up a lot of mom and pop type properties. They're property types that are in inefficient markets, unsophisticated markets where maybe the data is not real clear. And then also, we like property types that perform well in markets that we anticipate. So like I had talked about last night and was real adamant about, is whatever you're investing in, whether mobile home parks, self-storage, apartments, single-family homes, land, whatever, you should really be investing in property types that align with where you think the macroeconomy is going to go, right? So if you think that the economy is going to do really well, you should probably be investing in things that are going to perform well in a strong economy. Vice versa, if you think that the economy is not going to be doing very well, then you want to be investing in things that are going to perform well in that economy. And that's why we started buying manufactured home communities and self-storage, because historically they've performed very well in tougher economies where people maybe are looking for more affordable housing. And that's my short answer on why we own mobile home parks, and we keep buying them pretty aggressively.
The real answer is because they pay us to own them.
Exactly. They cash flow really well. And with a little asterisk next to it, they cash flow really well if you pay the right price, because it's always one of those questions. People will say, well, man, I heard those are cash cows, just like self-storage. Mobile home parks are cash cows. I go, yeah, if you pay the right price, but you can overpay on anything and lose money. So they have a low expense ratio, and once they're stabilized, they're not very management intense, which makes them attractive as well.
Now, what have your collections like been through 2020?
Sure. So we talked about it last night quite a bit. I did a pretty basic graph on what our revenue looked like year to date, and we've been pretty consistent. I mean, since January, we haven't really changed. Even as of a few days ago in September, we're 80 something percent, 85, 86% collected at what the 16th, 15th of the month, and so we'll be back in the mid to high 90% collections in September again. So, I think where we saw some maybe a little bit of change is where we had some evictions. Well, I don't want to we can talk about that later, but we really haven't seen a big decrease. And probably the reason why is because, number one, we're really affordable. We're about half the cost of a 2-bedroom apartment typically. So it's not too difficult to scrap together $350 to $450 if they need to pay rent. Secondly, we are the lowest cost provider, so there's kind of not any cheaper options. Yeah. And so that helps us. And it's housing, so people thankfully are prioritizing the roof over their head and paying that maybe over some other bills to make sure that they stay there. So I think we're probably pretty similar to other residential property types like apartments or single family homes right now from a collection standpoint.
Now, what have you guys been doing differently with the pandemic? What shifted, or did you have to do any pivots, anything like that?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. So, a couple different things that we changed going into COVID, which I think has really just been a benefit for us, is we increased communication between ourselves and our residents. We just listened, I guess, maybe a little bit better. Somebody said that they were really struggling due to a COVID-tied situation. We try and work with them a little bit more. We have a pretty strict no pay, no stay policy. So up to that point, we really don't communicate a whole lot in general. If somebody says they can't pay, we'll point them in directions of assistance and things like that. But we have to be fair across all residents and just put everybody through the same system. But we did increase communication quite a bit, trying to find out where people were struggling and try and point them in the right direction for payment assistance. We also increased our communication with our partners quite a bit and internally to make sure that everybody was in the loop on exactly what was happening, especially, March, April. We really didn't know what was going to happen the next month for, the first of the month. And so we, instead of giving updates on performance in our monthly reports, we were doing it like around the 10th again, just giving everybody an update on where we sat. And so communication increased a lot. We also implemented some systems, and I mentioned this last night, that there's nothing really good that's come from COVID. I mean, it's not a good situation in general, but if I have to find that silver lining, I would say that it really got us to focus on internal operations and our systems that we have in place. And excuse me, hang on one second. Somebody is calling and I don't know how to turn that off on my computer. But it got us to look at our systems and see where maybe we were flawed or where we could improve. And one area, just anticipating an increase in evictions, we went and looked at our eviction process, and we cut out some steps to get the managers communicating directly with the attorneys, and kind of took the corporate office out of the equation so that we could get things processed more efficiently. Just documented a lot of procedures to help us so that if things do get a little bit worse in the near future, we're just a better oiled machine, a well-run machine. And then last, liquidity. So we increased liquidity at all of our communities. We took what we had for minimum balances that we needed to maintain in all of our operating accounts and stepped those up a little bit to make sure that we had ample reserves to make just in case we needed it. So what we did kind of that first, that was March, that everything went on lockdown. So we were getting ready to do distributions from first quarter and just held off briefly to see how things were looking towards the end of the month, and then set those new marks on reserves and then distributed accordingly. So we've also increased our liquidity just as a company and kept some dry powder because we're anticipating some pretty awesome acquisition opportunities maybe towards the end of the year. So we've really stacked up some cash and getting ready to buy.
Yeah, we're seeing internally, I'm just seeing a lot of, particularly the older generation, this affected the most.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are just ready to be done, retire, transition out. That's more the opportunity I'm seeing in so many sectors that, that's just, you've got the baby boomer generation is kind of like, you know what, I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to chill out.
Yeah, they're ready to move to Florida.
Yeah, they are. I mean,
Yeah.
sales are through the roof. Now, how did the mobile home communities perform in relation to other property types through this?
So I think we kind of know the answer to that a little bit. I mean, you look at office, retail, restaurants, those have really struggled bad. And I feel bad for the owners of those property types because a lot of them didn't do anything wrong. They were running fine, and just the government comes in and says, hey, you can't have people within 6 feet of each other. Sorry, you can't do business. It just sucks. So they pretty much got the blunt of it. Being residential, and not having people gathered together closely, it really were positioned well. The other thing is some people who have been nervous about living close to each other and sharing air and having to share an elevator with other people have looked at manufactured housing industry as another alternative affordable housing option, because now they don't have to share amenities with people. They can walk into their own individual home, pull up driveway right next to their house, and they just get the same benefits of owning in call it a community, a single family home in a community, without the high cost of doing it and some of the maintenance issues that you have to deal with owning a single family home. So generally speaking, I think we've performed really well. And it's mostly because we're just a residential property type that is separate.
Well, but there's properties anymore. I almost grade them. One of the first forks in the road is, can you socially distance or not living here?
Yeah.
Like my brokerage, we had one of our customers, her second floor condo came up, and it was tough. Usually that's cool little complex right across the bridge from downtown, and normally it rents in a couple of days, and it sat around for about 6 weeks because it's, you got to touch the same stairs and the same door handles, and it's just not people are really focused on that. I don't know whether this is a lasting thing or not.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see if it is. So what happens next?
So one other comment on what you just said, though, which is kind of interesting, in areas like Florida or areas where you have a high number of retirees or people that are a little bit older in age, they're even more concerned, and for good reason. I mean, that condo might be in an area where is full of retirees, and so now you've got people who are ultra concerned about it that would normally live there. Now it's probably reserved to someone who's a little bit younger, not quite as concerned. So I'm sorry, what was your other question?
So what happens next?
Yeah. So I've got no crystal ball. I'm pretty sure you don't either, although you've probably got a little better pulse being the analyst that you are. I think if I could guess what happens next, we probably stay in a holding pattern through the election. And then it's going to go one of two ways, okay? Either Trump gets reelected, and this isn't not making this into a political conversation, but if Trump gets reelected, a lot of the subsidies that are currently holding us up, propping us up right now, are probably going to start to burn off in the near future, okay? So you're going to see a lot of the government involvement maybe burning off over the 6 months after that, which is going to hurt because there's a lot of businesses and people that are relying on that right now. And so that we're probably going to see and feel the pain shortly after the election if Trump gets reelected. But we hopefully in that situation, some of the other things that he may put in place will maybe expedite the return of jobs and kind of the economy in general. So hopefully we have kind of this crossing of decrease, actually more like this, decreasing in subsidies, but increasing in natural economic growth. If Biden gets reelected, there will probably be an increase in government involvement, probably an increase in subsidies, and that will probably become more of a permanent thing, at least for the time that he's elected. and an office. So that might slow. We may not feel quite as much pain immediately, but it's going to drag it out, and it'll be a long-term issue with a lot more debt involved. So I think either way it hurts. And there's probably going to be an increase in job losses, and we're going to start to feel the true results of what's happened with shutting down the world, especially the United States. But for us as manufactured housing communities, I think we'll probably see an increase in people having to move out. We'll probably see an increase in evictions for the short term. And then we'll probably see an increase after that of demand for affordable housing because, sorry, I had to send a text message there. We'll probably see a pretty high demand behind it because what you have is you've got people who are living in maybe a B-class apartment building and working hard, doing well, and one of those spouses has lost their job. Okay, and they say, okay, we need to cut back on our expenses. What's the next most affordable housing situation? They might have even been in a nice condo or apartment, and they're now maybe looking at our community as an opportunity to live more affordably. So I think we're going to unfortunately see some people move out, and then we're going to see quite a bit of demand for that affordable housing after that.
Well, if the economy's good, you've always got demand. If the economy's bad, your demand should go up.
Right.
So,
yeah,
you're good there either way.
Yeah, where manufactured housing has struggled in the past has been when lending is really easy and people can get cheap money and they can buy a single family home and with very little down. It doesn't make sense to buy a $50,000, $40,000, $30,000 manufactured home in a community when they can just go buy a condo or a single family with a few bucks out of their pocket and cheap interest rates. So we expect, and that's why we bought these, because when times are tough, they typically
what do you,
business day,
there's a lot of consolidation going on in this world. Like everything else, this private equity has become the Borg, and it just assimilates everything. I can tell you when we were doing a lot of distressed debt, all the Blackstones of the world showed up, and basically their cost of capital put us out of business because we couldn't compete with them.
Yeah.
So what's going on with, I know there's a lot of consolidation in this space. You got anything you want to share on that?
Yeah. So like I had mentioned, one thing that we really look for in a property type is the fact that it's maybe inefficient now, but going through that consolidation phase. And so manufactured housing industry has definitely been going through that. In the last 2 years, it's been insane. I mean, even back 2015 when we started buying, they were, it was happening. But now there's a lot of large operators. You've got 3 or 4 REITs in the space, a lot of private equity, and just a lot of small professional operators. The information is out there. There's kind of, you're starting to see that the industry best practices in place. And so what's happening is you got these large guys coming in and paying crazy prices for things that don't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. For example, Blackstone I just read an article yesterday. Blackstone is putting they've committed $550 million, and I couldn't quite tell if the deal was sealed or not, but story goes that they've committed $550 million in acquisitions to manufactured housing industry. And really the reason is they see what we see. It's a great property type to own with the economy going in a negative direction. So really what that's done is it's going to create even more, I guess you could say confirmation that it's a good property type. So I suspect we'll see even more.
Not only that, that's what, a couple % of their balance sheet.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot to us, 550 million, $500 million, but to them it's nothing. But it makes headlines, right? New property type, they've decided to go in and start buying, and so it's going to create some additional demand. And I think for existing owners, it's great. I mean, that it just compresses cap rates even more. It makes people even more hungry for them. buying that first deal or buying the next deal is probably going to be even more challenging as we go.
Well, that and since we've had the meeting, Jerome Powell went out on the record that he doesn't see raising rates for at least 3 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, if they're going to continue suppressing interest rates, then, I laugh because I've got mentors that are very doom and gloomy, and I'm not complaining about it because they saved me from myself in 8 and 9.
Yeah.
But it's just as bad to be early as it is to be wrong. And I can't outlast Jerome Powell printing money at the Fed. You know what I mean? So you really, you can go risk on, like you said, you're increasing your liquidity, but in real world, you can't shut it down unless you're just prepared to shut it down, because they can last longer than any of us. They can probably last longer than Blackstone, but they're kind of fueling Blackstone with their actions. So I would love to be able to step up to that Fed window at 1% and grab a couple billion, but they're probably smart enough not to let me do that. So.
Yeah, the cheap money is just going to fuel it even more, and especially with the larger institutional investors who have access to extremely inexpensive capital, both on the equity and debt side. They're just going to keep buying, and you're right. It's one of those things where timing the market doesn't make sense. You just keep buying good deals. At least for us, we're just continuing to buy good deals, being conservative in our underwriting, and expecting the worst, hoping for the best. But there are some people who just say, hey, I'm not buying until the market shifts. And in that case, you might be waiting a while. I think you might agree with me that 2 years ago, 3 years ago even, we were talking, man, when is this going to end? And so had that happened, we wouldn't own half of our portfolio that we own now.
It's an amazing opportunity to make yourself anti-fragile.
Exactly.
It's fairly easy to make money. Your investments are paying themselves, paying for themselves and then some. And it's just a great time to intelligently, to steal Nicholas Philippe Tassim's term, make yourself anti-fragile. I mean, exactly. I can tell you my own personal business models and my personal life, I'm not afraid at all of a correction because I've made myself fairly anti-fragile. All I see is because all it is a bell. You've got the seller side of the bell and the buyer side of the bell. And I'm really good at both sides of that bell and know how to make money and have performed on both sides, and just don't be in a position that that it can get you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really
fragile.
Yeah, it's positioning yourself to win regardless of what the market does, and
trying to get somebody to shut up.
You're gonna edit that out, but
no, that's the best part of the whole video right there.
Yeah. But yeah, it's positioning yourself. If the economy does well, have investments and be positioned to benefit. If it doesn't do well, be positioned to profit from it. And I think right now, some people who haven't seen that downturn before in real estate, that are being ultra aggressive still, and aren't looking at things that might be changing, they could get hurt. And also, they probably need to be looking at the downside a year ago, 2 years ago, to really position themselves well. Although there still are opportunities to buy things that are going to do well in the coming economy. So
then there's the whole, there's either inflation, stagflation, deflation.
Right.
And they're pretty committed to not having deflation.
True.
So, I mean, you can pretty much, we'll be Zimbabwe, with wheelbarrows of money before we'll probably have true deflation. Like, you had deflation in the housing market in 2008, and there was a decent little reset, which created a pretty amazing opportunity to pick up some cash flow.
Right.
But the Fed is, they're just saying they are pretty committed to, I think the worst case scenario you're looking at is stagflation. And then you're looking at so much cash out there. We're going to do a market call for the RIA next week. The first month of Jeff's market call. And basically I'm just going to talk about what I want to talk about, what I'm seeing in the market. I'm actually looking forward to doing it just because I think it's going to be fun because I'm a nerd. But it'll be data nerd heaven. But and I'm thinking about doing it at lunchtime. or maybe even early, maybe a coffee thing at 8. I'll right after I hang up from this, I got to kind of decide the time. But when I look all around, I mean, we've got a lot of transactions pending, new construction, rent to own or build to rent stuff. And the money's coming out of California. It's coming out of the Midwest. It's coming out of some areas. And a lot of them, we had a guy at the REIA meeting last night. He's trying to place $2 million worth of 1031 money. And he had just sold a house in California. Now, he showed me the house he just sold on Zillow for $2.2 million. And it was a 1,400 square foot shack, basically, in a really nice location. And he has to do something with that money. And particularly with the amount of money they're printing and the way it's to hold cash is a net negative thing. Actually, to hold a T-bill right now is really a net negative. It's really just more of a balance sheet function than anything else. When you look at T-bills, they've become a balance sheet function for large institutions. They're not really an investment anymore. You know, I had a old guy stopped by my office in 2013 and had just had a 30-year T-bill matured that was making 13% for 30 years. I'm like, brother, I don't know what to tell you on that. He's like, I need something that'll pay me at least what I was making before. And I was like, you know, Immokalee, head down and, you know, get good at blackjack. I think you can clear 13%. So, and, you know, it's not passive, but it's not terrible either if you like blackjack. But it's a different paradigm with money and yields and interest, and it's a new set of rules. Now, it may not be a long-term set of rules. It may not be a good set of rules. Half of the financial podcasts are people complaining that the rules that they mastered so well don't work anymore. Go ahead.
Well, no, I said things are changing. With inflation, if we go into a steady pace of inflation, really the ones who are going to benefit from that are the wealthy people who own assets.
Or the people who leveraged now before it hit.
Right, definitely. Leveraged assets are even better because you'll be able to pay that debt off very rapidly. But you know, the ones who are really going to struggle are the ones who are holding cash, don't have any investments, don't have any assets that are going to appreciate with that inflation. One other thing that I want to mention about that is,
let's throw something in that though. If you're 65 years old, going to cash in this uncertainty is not the worst idea, because you're going to need that cash. Depends on how much cash too.
Right. You know, the other thing about going back to real estate is the investors that own real estate that is on a fixed lease rate or rent rate for an extended period of time are basically, they're essentially the same as debt. They're going to be in a pretty bad spot. So owning real estate that can have rents keep up with inflation, and some might say, well, an annual lease isn't enough. I'd rather have an annual lease than a 5 or a 10-year or a 20-year lease with fixed increases built in. I'd like to be able to move with it. Now, if you have something like self-storage, which can adjust monthly with inflation, then you get into a rapid inflation situation, then you can really keep up. But but
you think about even too, you know, then you go, hey, give me some triple net stuff. You want to buy retail in this market?
Sure.
Retail's a little scary. You want to buy some, I mean, industrial triple net? Oh yeah. I mean, that's money. But, you know, do you want to buy into a REIT that owns a bunch of malls? Not really feeling that. So there's a component where commercial used to fill that void with that triple net lease. I have a dear friend, and he sold a bunch of Walgreens, and you know, there's Walgreens going out of business, and those used to kind of be the gold standard. You know, it was almost like a 4-net lease the way they structure them. But you've got what were kind of blue chip assets that you just bought and forgot about and collected a check, that they're shutting them down. Now, I think most of those people are still getting paid, but at some point there was a Walgreens in North Fort Myers that went down. Now, eventually the asset did trade, and they ripped it down and put one of the big strip mall size racetracks. So, you know, it'll eventually the market will repurpose it, but it's a really interesting time. And at the mobile home parks, to me, make the most sense. We were talking after the meeting last night, and one of my mentors, he owns some, and his comment to me was that, you know, because I was so in love with it, and he's like, well, it's a great concept, but let me tell you what's wrong with it. And he started it with, you basically own a small city, but you don't have sovereign immunity. So, you're basically a kind of an authoritative government type thing, but, they can still sue you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and litigation's going to be, we're going to do some topics on litigation because there are some frivolous litigation hitting, and I think it's just going to get worse and worse.
Well, I mentioned that last night. I mean, there's definitely an uptick in slip and fall frivolous suits because people are looking for cash and they're thinking, well, this company, that my community is a perfect target because they're rich, they got money, they got an insurance policy. So we've actually seen that happening in our portfolio a little bit. The other thing about a good analogy that I mentioned last night that kind of goes along with what you're saying, another good analogy for manufactured home communities, like a for-profit homeowners association, right? So they own their home. They instead of paying association dues, they pay us lot rent. Ours is for-profit, where an association isn't, but we have some authority to make sure that they maintain their homes, that they pay their dues, but we don't have to actually maintain their home because they own it. So it's kind of a weird setup, but it's turned out to be really good.
So you said something last night that I'm ready to launch a marketing wing to take advantage of, just because I want to say I'm partners with the Datillos. So, but tell us about, you had mentioned bring me a deal and I'll make you my partner. And that's pretty awesome because, you're nationwide essentially. I was going to turn our lot buying apparatus after mobile homes and see what I can come up with. So I can be your partner on about 15 deals.
That's exactly why I dangled that carrot, Jeff. I was targeting you. Yeah, and that's true. I mean, we have a couple of great acquisitions guys that are out targeting deals. I'm probably looking for one more. But I also want to make it known that if somebody brings us a great opportunity that we buy, I'm not going to pay a commission. I'll give you a piece of the action. And that can be really substantial money without having to have your own capital invested. You don't have to know how to run the community. You're going to get a report. You're going to get reports monthly on the asset. You're going to participate in all distributions, including the sale. We just sold an asset, and I could probably talk about this now. We sold one in December, and we had a minority partner because he brought the deal to us, connected us with the owner. He was also helpful a bit on the due diligence side. And averaged probably $1,000 a month through the entire 5-year ownership period. And he got a $350,000 check when we sold the thing. And it was simply because he brought a solid deal. He brought the owner to the table, and he helped us in acquire the property. So he killed it. So yeah, it is. And I think it's nice even for the guys and girls who are out looking for their own parks, and they're maybe looking for something that they can operate themselves. That's maybe they're investing their own cash and they're looking for that 20, 30 space park and maybe $1 million tops. And they got a couple $100,000 to invest, and they come across 150 space park, 100 space, 200 space park. Like, man, looks like a really good deal, but it's outside of my buying ability, both either for qualifying for the debt or the actual capital or the experience level. They bring it to us. Now they've got a much larger sponsor to run the deal. They get to see how the property, how the turnaround happens. They get to participate in it. And they can move on and keep buying their own parks with some extra cash flow coming into their pocket. So a small minority ownership in one of these deals can be really a substantial amount of gains from it annually.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, you keep me in mind, Jeff. And I just want to clarify one thing, and I did mention this last night. Somebody brings me some daisy chain deal where they don't even know the owner. I don't even waste my time. We're looking for a solid connection to an owner that wants to sell, where you're actually adding value to us and adding value to the deal by bringing a good opportunity. And I'm not talking to you, I'm talking maybe anybody else who hears this online. You need to bring a deal, not 3 other people that know about a park that is, that we have in our database already.
Now, my favorite are the well-traveled spreadsheets, the tapes or whatever they call them. And first thing I do is save it on my computer. and then look in the properties and see who actually made the spreadsheet. And usually nobody ever thinks to change that to their name inside the properties of the document before they send it out. And, we're one off from the bank, and they always have some wonderful story as to why the bank can't actually sell it like they would every other asset. And then you got about 8 people all trying to make a dollar, none of which know what they're doing or add a drop of value. It's I
Our,
haven't.
our,
Go
our
ahead.
question to qualify that person is, if we need to be on the phone with the owner within 10 minutes, can you make that happen? And if they go, well, I just need to call my partner, disqualified. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just make a 3-way phone call right now and get them on the phone so we can talk about the deal. You don't have a deal for us. And I'm not trying to go negative. I just want to clarify that I don't want 50 emails of people who found stuff on Facebook, just
Yeah.
bring a real deal. We'll do it together.
It's the interesting thing. It's so easy to reach out and touch people now, and it's become even more kind of discombobulated with a lot of that because there's so much chafe out there and so little wheat in regards to deals that it's interesting. But yeah, I thought that was an awesome pitch. So hopefully we're going to be the biggest property owner in America here in a couple minutes. I'm working on it.
With Jeff involved, I might be, one other thing that I threw out there is we are looking for really good people. I mean, our company's growing, and I'm looking for the best of the best to join our team. As you know, in Florida, it's sometimes a challenge to find hardworking people because we got so many retirees. And so we're looking really across the country for people who have industry experience, people who have specifically right now sales experience, and just looking to grow our team with really high quality, hardworking people that don't mind busting their butt but want to make something in a good career. So, if anybody knows a great salesperson or some people with manufactured housing or even real estate acquisitions experience, please reach out to me. We're building a good team.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add before we close it out?
No, I think really I just wanted to say thanks for, letting me participate with you. You've got an awesome organization. And I mentioned this on the post that when I was kind of putting on my Facebook that I was going to be talking last night at the Southwest Florida RIA, that I've been a member of multiple real estate investment associations, and I think everybody's kind of turned off by them. And it's sad because they should be a real good resource to the industry, but most of them are bringing in quote unquote gurus and selling things that really aren't going to benefit the people who are paying thousands of dollars for them. And I really respect you and Mike, because you guys have put together a speaker lineup at every meeting of just people who are doing deals and that are actually investors that have portfolios, or industry people that are doing it, and there's no sales pitches. And so that's why our company's been a supporter of and a sponsor of your organization for so long. So keep doing that, because I think the members get a lot of value out of the meetings and what you put out, because you're bringing quality only and no sales pitches.
My joke is that we live in intrinsic land. So, it's Intrinsistan, whatever you want to call it. But there was a point way back in the day in like 4 and 5 where we did that kind of stuff, but it's just not valuable. And we get so many calls about that now because, nobody's been sold in front of our group in so long. And it's a pretty good group. There's a lot of wealthy people that come to our meetings.
There is.
And I just tell them, like, send me your redacted 1040. And if your redacted 1040 reflects your sales pitch, then we'll put you in front of the group, and we don't even need to split that. You just come sell. It's fine. I'll probably buy the first one if your 1040 reflects your sales pitch. And boy, it's some of the conversations are rather interesting. Most of them have a virtual assistant calling from the Philippines now, though, so they don't really get it. But
yeah. Well, I think you mentioned something, and we won't drag this call out for much longer, but there is a much more sophisticated group of investors in your association than I've seen in a lot of others. And it is because what you're bringing is valuable, and it's not just trying to find people who want to get into real estate and are willing to write big checks to buy whatever the greatest course is this week. And so people who are already well invested in real estate, they come because there's constantly new things coming out and good information. And that's why you're attracting such high quality investors, which then increases the quality of your speaker program and all that. So just keep it up. That's kind of the only other thing I wanted to say is you've got something really good going, and I support it.
Awesome. Well, we'll have Mario's contact information, some links wherever we put the video. And awesome. It's great that you're willing to share some of your business model. If you were at the meeting, Mario actually shared his database with everybody that was there.
Missed out.
Awesome.
Hey,
Thanks,
guys,
Mario.
Follow me connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. I'm putting out a fair amount of content. Just, again, not pitching anything, just putting out as much content as I can that can help people in all types of real estate. So connect with me on Facebook. It's just, you can search and find me, but would love to connect with you.
We'll put your LinkedIn and Facebook links in there.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
This concludes this edition of RIAcast. Be sure to subscribe to receive our next episode. You can also subscribe at our website, www.swflreia.com. See you at a meeting soon. Please let us know if you have a suggestion for a future episode.